YouTube. Today we're going to be looking at carry guns, and we're going to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of the different types of guns that people choose to carry. And I'm just going to show you each and every one of them. I'm going to show you some of the reasons why they're a good choice and some of the reasons why they're a bad choice, and we'll try and figure out which one is probably the best one. So what I have here in front of us, we have 4 examples of different guns that people carry, the handguns people carry on them for personal protection. And before we go any further, I'm going to let you know that all these guns have been safety checked before I started making this video. And as I pick them up, I will show you that they are clear and not loaded. So topic for today is which type of firearm is the best one to carry? Which type of handgun would be best for you to carry on you? Well, basically, I've broken this down into 4. And I'm not saying this is the 4 only types of guns. I'm saying this is 4 different, very different types of weapons here. And we're going to start off with the most common one. I'm going to show you this isn't loaded. This is a striker-fired gun, semi-automatic striker-fired gun. Now, this is a pretty modern weapon. Within the past, 20, 30 years, the striker fires came out. They're composite on the bottom, which makes them a little light, and they don't have an external hammer, and they're very reliable. This one happens to be a Glock, so the Glock 30S. This is what I carry. This is my personal carry gun. This is chambered in 45 ACP because that's my caliber of choice that I carry. And what makes this a good carry gun? Well, one thing is Glock is known for its reliability, and you don't have to look at just Glocks. A lot of people has used this blueprint, and they've created these guns, and they've been duplicated a lot. And these striker fire guns are very, very reliable these days. They're light, and they hold a lot of capacity on them, and they're very easy to reload. And that's what makes a semi-automatic gun a very, very good option for carry. You reload them quick. You drop a magazine, you put another magazine in, and you're ready to rock and roll. But what can be some of the disadvantages of this? One of the disadvantages is any semi-automatic weapon, any handgun, any semi-automatic handgun can have a malfunction. Now, it's unlikely that one like this is going to have a malfunction, but it can happen, folks. I mean, I've seen Glocks fail too. They have failure to feeds, certain ammo dependent, or just the gun can fail in general, if you think about the way this works, a slide has to go back, has to eject around and insert a new one in, and it's a lot of moving stuff to happen in a very stressful situation. But this is one type. A striker fire semi-automatic handguns are a really good one. The second one we're going to look at is a single action semi-automatic handgun like a 1911. Now, this gun, one of the advantages of it is it's got an exceptional trigger, and it's extremely accurate. It's not going to take as good of a marksman to handle this gun that it would maybe one that's not as accurate or anything like that because of how good the trigger feels. Now, this thing's got a lot of advantages on it. This has been around for this particular design, this 1911. It's been around for over 100 years, and this is what the military carried on their side. They're usually pretty reliable. Any kind of failures that you have in these things, you're going to be, it's usually ammo related or magazine related. Most semi-automatic guns in general, not just 1911s, are usually going to be magazine related. When you start having failure to feeds and failure to eject, stuff like that, 99% of the time is going to be in the magazines. So if you get a good magazine, these things are reliable. Now, what's the disadvantages of this? Well, these are made out of steel, solid steel, and they're a little bit heavier. Another disadvantage to a single action gun is the way you carry this gun is you carry it in the cocked and locked position. So the hammer needs to be back, it's chambered, the hammer needs to be back, and it's cocked. So when you draw it out of the holster, your first instinct is to turn off this thumb safety. Well, people that train with these things, they don't have a problem with it, but you got to remember, folks, this is a disadvantage because it is one more step. When you pick the striker fired gun up that has no external safety on it. You can get them with external safeties. This is in the holster. You pick it up, draw, and shoot. Put your finger on the trigger and pull it. With this gun here, you're carrying it in your holster like this. Pull it out, draw, and take the thumb safety off, and then it's ready to rock and roll. And it's one more step. One of the other disadvantages to a 1911, and it has to be maintained a little bit more than the composite striker fire one. You have to oil it. It likes to be lubricated and everything. But that just goes as far as it's just to maintain anything that you have. But the big major disadvantage to this one is the thumb safety. You have to use the thumb safety on a 1911 platform. But other than that, there's no real disadvantages to this thing. It's probably as reliable as the striker fired one, as long as you have the proper equipment. You have a good one, train with it, and you know your weapon, and you know what ammo you're shooting out of. Now, the next one we're going to go into is a double action, single action hammer fired semi-automatic, and we're going to show you this one's not loaded. So this is a really cool concept. This one also does not have a safety like the striker fired one does. So this one here, the way you would carry this one is, it has an external hammer. You chamber around in it, and the hammer's back. Well, you have no safety on that, so at any moment in time, if you press this trigger or something presses this trigger, it's going to go off. So the way you fix that situation is you chamber it, and now you have a round in the chamber, and you take this second lever right here, and you pull this down, and this is a decocker, and it releases that hammer, and it does not rest on the firing pin. So you would carry it in a holster like this, and you draw it, and your first trigger pull is going to be double action. And then from moving forward, you'd have single action pull, which is a very lightened trigger. Now, what are some advantages and disadvantages of this one? Once again, your weight's going to be a disadvantage in an all-metal gun. They're just way heavier than these newer composite frame striker fires. But one of the other disadvantages is your first pull on this is going to be a little bit heavier than any of these ones that I've showed you so far. But that can be actually a positive, because your first draw, if you're in a stressful situation and you don't get in these situations a whole lot, which I hope not a lot of people do, you want to be sure you want to take that shot. So this gives you a little bit extra time to think about it when you're pulling it. And if you had, God forbid, you had to take a second shot, it's going to be pretty easy. But so the first initial trigger pull is going to be a little bit heavier, so I would call that disadvantage. Maybe not quite as accurate, because a lot of people, when they're pulling the trigger, they can pull the gun left or right, up or down, or whatever. But training fixes all that, folks. You can fix all that in training, but I would call that a disadvantage. Another disadvantage is there is no safety on it, and people that are hell-bent on safeties, the first one I showed you, and this one's not going to be a very comfortable one for them. But I'm not a safety person or anything like that. But I would say the two major disadvantages are your weight for a full metal gun and the double action pull on the first one. But other than that, it's a lot less complicated than the single action one, because the single action one, you're going to have to do that extra step. You're going to have to pull it out, take the extra step, and do it. Now, as far as reliability, as long as you get good magazines, as long as you train with it, I would say this one's going to be a pretty reliable option also. But once again, this is a semi-automatic gun, so there is always a chance that you can have a failure. And all these guns that I showed you here are pretty much top-notch, so they're going to be less likely to have failures if you get a cheaper or a less reliable one, a less non-reliable one. The final one we're going to show you is a Revolver. And this is a J-frame Smith & Wesson revolver. It's very popular amongst the carry crowd. This is an older one. A lot of people choose to carry the new airweights, the titanium frame or alloy frame ones that are real light. This one's a little bit heavier. This is a stainless steel one, but it'll work for an example, and plus it's a cool one to look at while we're giving a revolver thing. So this is a real good. It's very compact, and it's not too heavy, Now, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of this? Well, the advantage right out of the gate is this one is going to probably be the most reliable weapon on here. This is probably going to be 99.9% reliable. It will work every time. There is no magazines to jam. All the magazine is built into the gun on a revolver. So this is the magazine, folks. Put your ammunition in there and it's not going to fail. And every time the cylinder rotates around, it goes to a next shot. So this particular gun will do double action or single action. So when we were talking about your double action pull on the 6 hour I just showed you, when you pull this out right away, it's going to be a little bit heavier of a pull than a single action, but you also have the option of doing single action. But nobody's going to do a cock and an aim in a self-defense situation. It's going to be pull it out of the holster, draw, draw, draw. That's the way it's going to work with the revolver. Now, what are some disadvantages to it? Well, I've already told you this thing's going to be 100% reliable. So the disadvantage would be the capacity on it. It only holds 5 rounds, and some of them you can get these small revolvers also that hold 6 rounds. So you're only going to have a 5 to 6 round capacity on this, and I would see that as a disadvantage. But how many self-defense situations has anybody ever heard of where anybody reloaded? It's usually not going to happen like that, folks. If you talk about a true self-defense situation in your home or something like that, it's going to be 1 shot, 2 tops. And if you're in a store or a parking lot or something like that, nobody's reloading and getting into a gunfight. And if you're getting into a gunfight with a handgun, you're not doing it right. It's just as simple as that. So, but a lot of people carry these small revolvers. They are 100% reliable. They're pretty safe. There's no external safety on them, but you have to actually pull a double action trigger to make this thing go off. And so you're looking at a relatively safe weapon. The only disadvantage to this one, like I said, would be the capacity. So recap here, and I'll go through them one more time really quick, and I'll tell you what I use as an example, because this wasn't really about the weapons. This is more about the types. Recap: your striker fired gun, composite bottom, very reliable, very modern. The only disadvantage I see here is the fact that it's semi-auto, and if you were one of these people that was dead set on having an external safety, you're not going to have one on this particular one. But they do make striker fire ones where they do. And the example used here is a Glock 30S. And this was chambered in 45 ACP. This is a 10+1 capacity with a flush mount mag in it. 10 rounds of 45. Next one we looked at would be a single action 1911, and this particular model happens to be a Wesson Combat Professional, and these are 8 round single stack magazines and 1 in the chamber, so you're carrying around 9 rounds of 45 ACP. Wesson Combat Stainless Professional. And next one we looked at is a double action single action hammer fired semi-automatic. And this one here happens to be a SIG 220 Elite carry in stainless. And this one's also chambered in 45 ACP. You see a pattern here, folks? 45 ACP. And the next one we used as an example was a revolver, a G-frame Smith & Wesson. This one is a Smith & Wesson model 60 no dash 38 special stainless steel Smith & Wesson double action revolver. So that's the ones we use as an example here. And if you have any questions on carry guns or which type that you use, I'd like to hear about it, or which one you think would be your best. You don't have to choose these exact weapons, folks. That's what I need you to know. I just use these examples: a single action, a double action, single action, a revolver, and a striker fire. I just used the ones that I have on hand here. But anyway, folks, thank you very much for watching my video today, and you folks have a great day.